I ordered all 88 counties to relocate any polling locations from senior residential facilities to alternate locations. Obviously, that's a big step and it requires a lot of work, and our county boards of elections are working to do that right now as we speak.
After announcing approximately 1% of Ohio's population may be carrying coronavirus, the state is taking steps to ensure its election process is safe. In addition to poll location closures at nursing homes, 64 other locations have been closed, and Ohio is allowing curbside ballot drop-off at the Board of Elections office.
Both Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden were expected to hold rallies in the state of Ohio, but they canceled them out of an abundance of caution. Joining us to discuss more about the state's primary preparations and the race so far is Ohio Democratic Party Chairman David Pepper. Great to have you today, sir. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, David.
So do you think it's the right decision to continue with the primary as scheduled this Tuesday, given all the concerns?
I do. I mean, I think you have to move forward with it legally and as precedent, but obviously we have to all be working extra careful to make sure people can vote safely, and we're doing just that. And also, obviously, be able to exercise their right to vote, which people still have a right to do.
So, David, what are some of the precautions that are being put into place other than moving nursing locations? I know, with wipes. I mean, Crystal and I were talking. One of the things we, of course, associate with voting is volunteers and, captains and all of that. How is that working? How are we making sure everybody's kept safe if they're going to be congregating in a line and using the same voting machine, et cetera?
Right. I mean, obviously, in the end of the day, the Secretary of State has to oversee that process, and everything you can do to encourage social distancing, even in the voting process, you should do. One thing we are really pushing hard is people can still vote early. They can still send it by mail. If it's postmarked by the 16th, it still counts. So people should do that as much as possible. You also have early votes still happening. The lines have been generally a lot smaller there than they'll be on Election Day. So the more people can get their vote out of the way, I think the less of a concern on Election Day. At the same time, we also want to make sure we don't have, the kind of standard voting day problems that are so frustrating like we saw on Super Tuesday. So we are triaging right now to make sure that all those nursing homes, that people know where the new location is. So we're calling through voters. And by the way, those nursing home residents who would have voted on site now have a problem themselves. How do they vote? And there's a special process to allow people who have a difficulty going to voting location. We're calling every Board of Election to assure there's a plan so those residents can also vote safely. So it's a tough balance, be safe, but also still ensure that people have their right to vote.
Certainly.
What happened on Tuesday was frustrating. All those long lines, other problems, equipment problems. So we are still doing everything we can to have a observing process so that we learn every lesson possible by November, when so many people will turn out. But in the meantime, obviously, going back to a couple other questions, I don't think campaigns should be doing your kind of closing rallies, to say the least. If you're going to do a canvass, just drop the literature. Don't knock on the door. Don't you guys would know enough about campaigns. Often when you do a canvass, you have a kickoff. Everyone comes together. Skip that part. You also have text messaging, telephones. That's a lot of what you're doing anyway. I'd use as much of that as possible. People aren't going to be excited to have a stranger at their door, and I don't think volunteers will be doing that. So you have to adjust. The good thing is there are the types of technologies that allow people to adjust.
Yeah. And talk to me about the status of our universities still in school in Ohio. Are you concerned about college students being able to cast their ballots?
I mean, as much as possible. There have been a lot of shutdowns. I couldn't hear the first part of your question, but schools are now closing down after Monday. Public schools and private schools, high schools and below, all over the state. A lot of campuses are shut down, and those college students hopefully are taking, if they're here, taking advantage of the opportunity to vote early.
And so, what else? What are some of the other disruptions in daily life that we're seeing there, David?
I think that I'm a Democrat. Our governor's a Republican. I give him a lot of credit. He has done what Donald Trump has not been doing, which is all week he's been really taking it seriously. I think he and a few other states, obviously Washington, he stepped up and made this decision to close schools next Tuesday. That's going to obviously be a huge disruption. They've shut down all major events over 100 people. That's not a suggestion. That's an order. I agree with that. I'm glad they're doing that. We had a major dinner ourselves scheduled on Sunday, where we were going to, obviously get excited about the primary. We shut that down a few days ago. But I think I will say, there's a lot to do, and the testing in Ohio is as pathetic here as anywhere. It just doesn't exist nearly as much as it needs to. But I do think the whole push from the top down, but also from the local level up, a lot of organizations are stepping up. We're transitioning as a party very quickly to work from home. I see businesses all over the state doing that. I see other organizations doing that. But I will say, I think our governor has set a tone from the very top about how serious this is, and people will follow that lead. People are just going to have to adjust to a different type of work environment. They're doing it from home, more conference calls, more meetups, you name it. And I think the sooner everyone does this, the safer we'll be.
Have you heard concerns from a lot of times the volunteers at the polling places will be Republican or Democratic Party faithful? Have you heard from some of the volunteers tend to be elderly retirees about concerns about their safety manning those polling places?
Yeah, that's actually, I should have mentioned that. That's another big concern that's come up when you ask about logistical issues. There have been a drop-off of poll workers. And as you know, poll workers are, you need enough poll workers to keep the lines from being too long, to answer questions, to deal, we've had a lot of purging in this state, unfortunately. There are going to be people who show up who've been purged. They didn't know it. They need to understand why and be told the right directions. So the other thing that we've been working on is trying to get people, especially when elderly poll workers who've done it for years decide, understandably, I don't want to do that, I feel at risk. We are all working very hard to try and get other poll workers who are younger and less vulnerable. And a number of people, hundreds of people, have stepped up, but it's something that Republicans and Democratic, both parties, because you want to have a balance. That's how it works. We are working hard, our county parties, our Secretary of State, to try and get other people to step in the breach when folks who are a little older just don't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, well, for those who are watching the show, live in Ohio, are young or healthy, I hope you guys step up to the plate there so the election can go smoothly. Last question here for you, David. How do you think that this changes the stakes of the debate that's happening Sunday, of course, first head-to-head between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders? What do you think that voters in your state are going to be looking for there?
I'll just say it. I don't mind a robust debate, but given the state of things, I hope, and we saw this in both Senator Sanders and Vice President Biden in their speeches yesterday. I think this should not be like the last couple debates. People are worried. They want leadership. They're not seeing it from the president in any way. And I think this is an opportunity for both candidates to show what presidential leadership actually looks like. And my hope is not only are they trying to do well in the debate against their opponent, they're actually spreading the real facts about what's happening to citizens who haven't heard that from their own president. So hopefully they're obviously playing a role. They each want to win the primary, of course. But my hope is they also can do the kind of work that in any other moment the actual president would be doing. That would be an enormous public service if they both can do that. And frankly, I trust that they will.
All right, Chairman David Pepper, thank you so much. Great to have you.
Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Take care.
Next on Rising, Professor Richard Wolff, who weighs in on the growing economic crisis stemming from the coronavirus pandemic.